Hello and welcome to Affable Chat. My name is Benjamin and this is my co-host Joey.
Hey, how's it going?
And today we're talking about Tropic Thunder.
This is a raunchy, satirical, action meta-comedy mockumentary filmmaking film.
Directed by Ben Stiller.
The cast includes Derek Zoolander, Iron Man, Mr. Schneebly, Grover, Jay Baruchel, Cooper, Barry, Red from Pineapple Express, the Hulk's dad, and Tom, the Running Man, Cruise.
I watched this movie on YouTube. Joey, how did you watch it?
I also watched it on YouTube.
I've noticed with all the frequency with which we have to go and actually rent these movies is pretty frustrating. There's so many streaming services and I have access to many of them, but there are still so many great movies that you have to rent.
I don't know what lesson we should take from this. Everyone else should change, or maybe we should change the movies we pick.
Maybe.
we picked them.
Maybe, but yeah. And
we only have ourselves to blame.
I think there's something to be said about the profitability of some of these movies, where it's Tropic Thunder is so good, or it did so well when it came out, that people will pay money again to see it now. On totally.
But there's also seasons too, right? I think it was probably on Netflix for a few years or something, and then it came off. So I don't know how that works.
Right. I just think it's frustrating because I was actually on the Affable Chat Twitter talking about Bubble Boy with some randos, and they were like, "Oh, that I was doing some memes, and they were like, "This is a great movie. How can I watch it?" And they're like, "It's not on Canadian Netflix," and I was like, "Well, it's on YouTube," and they're like, "I don't want to pay money," and I was like, "Okay." So
fair.
It is definitely fair, but it's a shame because I wish this was a little bit more accessible because this is a great movie. Why don't you tell us the synopsis for this movie, Joey?
Hollywood wins again as we get a closer look at the genius and meticulous organization that goes into making a star-studded film.
That's right. We've got Tropic Thunder. Let's go ahead and get into it with our pros and our cons. Joey, what did you like about Tropic Thunder?
Am I allowed to say it's funny? It's shocking and gross, but totally all in. And there's a really great acting from Jack Black, Ben Stiller, and plenty of others. It really is an ensemble cast movie, and it really delivers on that part. It's a standout, very memorable performance from Robert Downey Jr., and it goes all in so fast and never lets up. It's epic and exciting in a really comfortable way. It's a great popcorn movie, and it has a pretty good story, too. What about you?
I will echo your funny sentiment because this movie did make me laugh. It made me laugh when I was a teenager, I think for partially different reasons, but it still makes me laugh today. An amazing star-studded ensemble cast, the kind you dream of. It could have potentially been even more star-studded. We'll talk about that later. But I mean, seriously, this is a crazy A-lister type cast for this movie, which you almost have to have for the type of satire they're going for. Which was another great aspect of this movie, this amazing Hollywood culture satire, which I think goes over really well. A very unique premise. This movie is unlike any other movie. And
is it?
Well, you're right. But
it's kind of it's like you got a bunch of entertainers and they go into a situation where they're mistaken for something else, and then they become that thing in a way, right? I could think of at least two at the top of my head that are just like that.
That's
Galaxy
true.
Quest,
but if that was
Bug's Life,
if that was the only thing that this movie brought to the table, I would agree with you. But it has some very unique aspects to it that
it's almost a genre at this point of the actors are something else,
Sure.
Or mistaken for something else.
Sure, but I still feel like this movie has a unique brand with the way that it accomplishes that, and also some very in particular aspects that are unique to this movie. I'm hinting a little bit here at some of the more edgy topics that this movie embraces, so we'll get to it.
Hint.
But also, I just think this movie is really memorable. This was one of the first rated R movies I ever saw, and it has stuck with me ever since. And I think that's really great about it. Now let's talk about the cons. And what did you not like about Tropic Thunder, Joey?
Well, obviously, not every joke lands, especially in today's more sensitive climate. I think overall it's aged pretty well, but not great. It's certainly not something that would come out today, I think, and be as well received as it was. And I think I mean, just based on the premise alone, it is kind of self-indulgent in a way, of just like, hey, like, we're gonna blow stuff up for no reason, basically. Like, we're gonna have all these guys in there and talk about how great acting is and stuff. I mean, there is that level of self-awareness, but it's still so much like, like, look what actors can do, or like what look what the power of acting is, or something. You know, there is that kind of unabashedly like self-aggrandizing, even though they're still making fun of themselves, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, look, we're so cool, we can make fun of ourselves and still have like all this stuff, like great stuff happen to us, you know? Like, look at all this, look at us make ourselves look cool while making fun of ourselves.
Right,
you know?
right. So it's like having their cake and eating it too. Kind
it
of
is.
like, haha, look at us in this war film. But also look how awesome we look in this war film.
Look how down with the kids, and like, look how self-aware we are, right? Like, saying that doesn't really make you very self-aware.
I just feel like it's not possible without, like, this type of satire wouldn't be possible without them doing that, you know? Like, it's like,
sure,
you wouldn't be able to make these kind of criticisms as, they wouldn't hit as hard if they weren't making fun of literally themselves, you know? So
That's
I don't know.
a good point.
I think it's necessary, but I agree. They do definitely get to have both. I don't know. I think this movie's pretty great. I think it accomplishes what it sets out to do for the most part. But I would have liked to see more satire for like actual Hollywood filmmaking, like we see at the beginning. And one of the most memorable scenes, is just like really kicks the whole thing off. Literally, is the like big production
opening sequence.
With the actual movie set on it. And I think that's super hilarious. I think that if you can't see any more of this movie, just seeing that scene, I think is a good way to get a taste of what Tropic Thunder set out to do. But like, it's almost like two phases of it. It's like, we're tricking you into thinking this is a real war movie, and then after that, let's dive into like what's rotting underneath. But I kind of wish we'd gotten more of that Hollywood, like, this is what it's like to be on a movie set and make fun of what literally goes on for all movies, as opposed to just getting straight into the specific story of Tropic Thunder. I mean, you have to tell that story, but I kind of wish we had gotten more of the onset, here's what prima donnas really do on a real movie set, as opposed to in an active war zone.
Yeah, you get less, it's like, even though all of our characters are kind of dysfunctional, they still like accomplish the goal that they set out to do, even if they're kind of haphazardly doing it, you know? It would have been interesting to see them fail miserably, I guess, because because they are so dysfunctional and useless as people.
Right. So those are our pros and our cons. Now let's dive into our overall section and really get into this movie. Joey, take it away.
This was better than I remember it being. I thought this was going to be like a series of kind of pretty good bits, but it actually like flows together really nicely, and the script is pretty well written. I think there's a lot of things this movie does really well. It has a really great cast. Obviously, we've talked about that a lot, and they're all working really hard to deliver on like their own conflicting and over-the-top storylines. It has a really decent script and some really great callbacks, like the whole panda thing. That was freaking hilarious. Where he accidentally kills a panda, and he's like, his whole thing right now is that he loves pandas. The TiVo thing with Matthew McConaughey is epic. And
throughout the whole movie, it's so funny the way that every time like they're talking about all this stuff, his agent cannot see past this like problem with the TiVo. Like, he's talking about all this other crazy stuff going on. He's like, wait, did you say no TiVo?
I am the set. Wait, they still haven't hooked up the TiVo?
Yeah.
The whole Simple Jack thing is great too. That's a great like running gag. And there's some really hilarious twists and like a really solid ending too that like mirrors the beginning. So yeah, overall, well-written movie.
Yeah, definitely. I felt like it was a good, like, that was why I was having trouble criticizing it, because again, I was like, I kind of wish the whole movie had been like this overblown action thing, which at times it does return to that, especially when they literally do the scene from the movie again at the end of the movie. That's great. A great return to that. But I felt like it all made sense. The parts in between that are like, maybe you could say a little bit less memorable or a little bit more boring, they are important in building the characters and making it so that you can tie this thing up at the end.
Oh yeah. But I think the thing that makes the movie really hilarious and like makes it kind of stand above where it normally would be, it's just its perfect like adherence to we're going to make the most ridiculous movie we can. And it's just dedication to that. The beginning sequence is just so epic and it sets the stage for the entire rest of the movie. Every other moment is just trying to live up to that. And I think on the most part, it totally delivers, which I think is amazing. And then hidden beneath all of the, curse-filled rants, light racism, and the gay jokes is a movie about actors and about the role those actors like play in our society.
Yep.
Robert Downey Jr. plays a character named Kirk Lazarus, who is a like classic method actor. He always really gets into all of his roles. And at first glance, he's kind of an odd choice for this movie, I think, because I don't think you normally would see Robert Downey Jr. in a Ben Stiller comedy. Usually, he's in movies that have a little bit more of an emotional range. But I think Ben Stiller is kind of an underrated director. He's always been very competent. He's a great actor, and all of his movies often have a surprising amount of heart in them. Like I'm thinking of Night in the Museum, or even like Dodgeball. Like there's a surprising amount of like kind of good feeling, happy endingness to those movies that like it's character driven. And yeah, I think for that reason, Robert Downey Jr. is a great choice to fit in there because he does bring this extra level of like acting chops to this movie. And his method acting as Kirk Lazarus and as the actor's actor, right? He's like what other actors like aspire to be like, really shows and highlights the positives and negatives that come along with being a character like that in real life.
Yeah, well, it's a challenge, right? This is such an ambitious character. And you can't have somebody, it would not work at all unless you had someone who's amazing at acting, and
right.
Robert Downey Jr. really brings that in this. I don't know. It's such a hard thing to do is to be like, say, you're a great actor. Now act like that,
Right. Act like an actor who acts great.
Yeah.
It is. It's crazy. But yeah, the way I would describe him is in two parts, right? He's talented and confident, Kirk Lazarus. And he has all of these awards because he's pushed himself further than anybody else has. And he thinks of acting as kind of this humble yet noble profession that's all about human connection. But at the same time, he's also hacky and insecure. He thinks that acting is like an ultimate skill because it makes you into anything you say you are, whether that's, a rice farmer, a monk, or even a black guy. So like it's this dichotomy of being self-aware enough to understand how to portray himself in the media, but also not being self-aware enough to know that what he's doing is extremely inappropriate, which I think is kind of how this whole movie is in a way too, right? It's self-aware enough to understand that being self-aware is kind of this fun way of poking fun at yourself, but doesn't go far enough to make the actors in this movie look completely ridiculous, right? And for that reason, it's like, it's a little bit pulls its punches. It's more fun than it is like haunting, I guess.
Well, yeah, and it's like, it could pose, it could make the same character totally irredeemable. A lot of people look at something like doing blackface as irredeemable, right?
Right.
But they create him as like a sympathetic character who is just confused about who he is, and that's his biggest struggle, as opposed to being somebody who's so, I don't know, vain or is just totally irredeemable in some sense, where they're willing to do this because it's self-gratifying or glorifying in their eyes, and there's no and to show that how destructive that is, how inappropriate that is, and just run him into the ground, right? They instead are able to create a story arc for him to redeem himself, when you could have taken it the other direction and just completely pushed him to the edge, and then totally destroyed him in some way, Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is like it is that risk, right? And you have to always think like this is that there are actual people who are like playing these characters, right? Like they're all exaggerations. And I wonder how much of that is like comes from Ben Stiller's own experience, Like what does he see in himself or someone like Tom Cruise, and like where they fit on that kind of spectrum.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Have you ever watched Entourage?
No.
Well, Entourage is a show about basically like what it's like to be a movie star. And the entourage are like the main character's friends, and they all interact with the things that happen to his life, but there's like this one central character who he's at the beginning of the series, a new like face on the scene, and eventually he goes on to star in like superhero movies and all these other things, and that changes his life and the people around him and all this other stuff. And it's kind of like Hollywood A-list actor simulation, because he's not a real character, and the movies he stars in aren't real, but the actors that are in there with him are real actors playing themselves in the show. Right. So it's kind of a fun way to just, get into that situation. I think Tug Speedman kind of plays that same character where it's like the protagonist actor in the simulation, where it's like everybody loves action movies. So he does action films and he gets paid the most. That's why he's important, is because his movies made the most money. And then now he has to redeem himself after having been in like a total major flop. And multiple flops, because he was in Scorcher 6 and Simple Jack, of course. I don't know. I don't think that really is something that Ben Stiller would identify with specifically, because I don't think that there's some sort of parallel you can draw to a real life Ben Stiller action movie that flopped or something, or some franchise that made him. But I think we all understand kind of the archetype of an actor who became popular as a result of being part of a popular franchise, right? That's interesting. And to see them have to go out and redefine themselves outside of that is something we're very familiar with. It's
yeah. Especially when it's someone you feel like you're familiar with, someone that you feel like
Yeah.
Like, and seeing them doing something unusual, it makes you kind of stop and think about it a little bit more. Like, think about Daniel Radcliffe in Swiss Army Man, right? Like, we're very familiar with how he is in Harry Potter, but like in that movie, he's completely different. He's unrecognizable as our favorite wizard, So it's interesting to like kind of bring that back, and it reminds you a little bit of that there really are just people, and they have their own ambitions and things outside of what you think they should do.
Right. And it's cool to see. I mean, I always love the way that Ben Stiller casts himself in his own projects,
Yes, me too.
It's always an interesting, because it's always super intentional.
It's like, it's always very like, I don't know, it has a self-aware aspect to it. It's a very like almost demeaning thing that he'll usually put himself in kind of a non-sympathetic light, which I appreciate a lot. I'm thinking of movies like Saving Sarah Marshall, which was directed by Jason Segel, and he's like the main character, and he's like he's in love with all these beautiful women who are also in love with him. What? Saving Sarah Marshall?
Isn't it Dating Sarah Marshall?
No, it's Saving Sarah Marshall, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. I've seen it, but it was a long time ago.
Anyway, the whole thing is just like a fluff piece for him, and about how great he is and all these beautiful women that he's directed to make out with him,
Right. We were both wrong. It's Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh. That's a little ironic.
We both forgot.
Don't really care. I would like to forgetting Sarah Marshall. Okay.
But also, I mean, just Tug Speedman, like part of his motivation is like, and this kind of goes to Kirk Lazarus as well. It's like trying to get the Academy, like to impress the Academy, which is another thing that this movie takes on as far as like criticizing Hollywood culture, because everybody cares so much about this Academy, even though personally, as a fan of movies, I could not care less. Like, I think we've talked about this before, but it's like, I appreciate when good movies are awarded these Academy Awards because they deserve some sort of recognition. But I hate when people let the awards going to a different movie somehow insult the works they like. It shouldn't take away from anything else just because some group of elitists decided it wasn't the best.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's so many problems with the Oscars in general, but it's just, or award shows in total. But my philosophy has always been exactly what you just said. If it's great when you win one, but it doesn't mean anything if you didn't.
Right.
Which like that probably means the awards a lot, and that's exactly my intention. So.
Well, yeah, and it's like same thing as like, was Leonardo DiCaprio not a good actor before The Revenant?
Right.
It's like, no, that alone, it's, and I mean, I don't want to get off on this tangent, but you also have to think about how the fact that your movie came out during a certain time frame is totally nebulous. Like, it means nothing.
Yes.
Just because your movies contest like against this movie doesn't necessarily mean anything. They weren't made to compete with each other. So
that's right.
Anyways,
well, if they are, then it's lesser too.
Yes. Yeah. So that's partially on Tug Speedman. I mean, with Tug Speedman, we also have to talk about the character of Simple Jack, because there was this was one of the more controversial aspects of this movie, was how they kind of tried to make like playing a retarded character into something humorous. And while you can take a look at it from just that baseline of like, haha, they said retard, like, I'm sure there are people who actually do think that's funny, like very lowbrow kind of comedy. But I also think that the criticism of acting and what it means to take on, like Kirk Lazarus talking about what it's like to go full retard, I think is an interesting thing to discuss, and it's nuanced.
I mean, movies, like, especially like biopics, or not even biopics, but movies about characters, are about people that are interesting. And if the only thing that is different about you is that you have some sort of mental handicap, that then doesn't make you that interesting, honestly. It just makes you a normal person. So you have to have some sort of thing that makes you interesting, right? He says, like, Dustin Hoffman, he's not a retard, he's just autistic. He has all of these other, like, I don't want to say superpowers, but he has all of these other mental capacities that other people don't have. That makes him interesting.
Right.
And the examples he gives are all really great. And that's kind of why I think Simple Jack falls in its face, I guess, in a way. Although I think it indulges a lot in its, like, hey, he's playing someone who's dumb, like,
yes.
Get it? Like, that's the thing. And although they're like saying, oh, that's bad, they're still doing it. So
it was definitely, I think that there was a certain part of me as when I was a teenager who watched that and was like, haha, like, look how much of an idiot Ben Stiller looks like right now. Like, they made him put the teeth in. That's so funny. And now watching it when I'm a little bit older, a little bit more not stupid, I realize how it was way more uncomfortable for me. Like, it didn't seem like it shouldn't be in the movie, but I feel like it only hit as a criticism. And to spend so much time on it was almost excruciating, because I was like, okay, this is really not good, like having the
only redeem. Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
Well, like having Simple Jack in the background of the agent of his office, with him like prancing around with like an arm that rotates with a mallet in its hand. I was just like, oh, this is so weird, dude. I don't want to look at this.
Yeah, imagine the person who built that.
Right.
Yeah, I think the only redeemable part about this is that as soon as he gets any sort of recognition, it goes immediately to his head. He's like, oh my gosh, they love me here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna keep doing this. Like he totally forgets where he is and like the situation he's in. And he's like, I'm just an actor playing a part for the people that love me. And it's like, yeah, but like, what are you doing, man? What character are you playing?
Yeah, so that one, definitely, you have to talk about that when you talk Tug Speedman. But it's, I don't know. I still think even though it's obviously offensive and all that stuff, like, I don't think it makes this movie unwatchable or makes it so that you shouldn't watch this movie, because like, I still think that the overall feeling you come away with Simple Jack was, this is not what you should be doing in a film. And that's right. Like the point, I think a lot of people who are offended by this would agree.
Yes, I agree. Not something that holds up. Also, just one more thing. It just came back to me. Tug Speedman. I think that's a clear reference to Tom Cruise. I think he's. He's supposed to be like a A-list Tom Cruise type, I think.
Definitely.
So,
action hero for sure.
And I think the Scorcher 6, I think it's supposed to be like Mission Impossible or some sort of other action franchise. So,
which is
anyway,
I mean, those are so good. The intro,
the intro things are so
the
awesome.
Trailers at the beginning, which again, that's part of what makes this movie so unique. Is it's like, what a hilarious little bit to do to kick the movie off. It really sets the tone for like what this movie is trying to do.
I think the thing that makes that the most amazing part about that is that those appear before the studio logos do. So it's almost like a real trailer,
Yes.
Like normally, like the studios have to have their bits, right? They have to have their minutes or 2 minutes of like exposure, but like they said, nope, we're gonna do in order for these bits to work, we have to do it before the studio logos.
Definitely.
And I think that's just proof of dedication, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, and then you just take it to the theater when it actually would have come out. These commercials would have been right next to actual commercials. So
that's right.
Indistinguishable. So I can only imagine the feeling. It's like, what is going on? Like, this is so
I love
bizarre.
that so much.
Like that, I didn't see it in the theater because I was too young, but it would have been, I know it would have been amazing. So an amazing bit.
It's really clear what they were going for, and you can easily imagine it. So
yeah.
It's awesome.
So moving on from Tug Speedman, we've got Jeff Portnoy, who is played by Jack Black, and he's a toilet humor drug addict who's famous for his Fatties movies,
where he plays a bunch of different characters.
Right, where he does because apparently this is parodying The Clumps, which the Nutty Professor 2, starring Eddie Murphy, where they did the same bit where he played all the different characters. And I love it. They did such a good job of boiling it down to just being every character is the same joke: fat and farting. What?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Which is pretty hilarious. And then he's pretty much, I don't know, his character I feel like could have been fleshed out a little bit more because he is kind of like, he's just fat and addicted to drugs. But Jack Black is hilarious on screen. Like he.
Oh man, I think this is so funny because he's like, it's kind of unusual for his kind of characters. Usually he's a little more clean cut, and I think his storyline more than any of the other ones conflict with the main storyline, right? His point A to point B is just happens like by the chance of movie logic that to line up with what their common goal, right? He is on a totally different track than the rest of them, and it just happens to be somewhat parallel to theirs. I think that's hilarious. I wish there was more like that, where everyone was kind of in the same situation, but going in totally different directions.
Right, going on their own journey. Yeah,
that's right.
Oh man, and one of the things that really strikes me about this movie is how well it kind of camouflages itself with its own packaging. Like when you look at the cover art for Tropic Thunder, it's got Robert Downey Jr., Ben Stiller, and Jack Black, and they're all in a very like realistic war kind of movie pose. Especially Jack Black. I loved seeing him transform from what we know him as, which is like the doughy, like fun, like funny guy, rock and roll funny guy, into this like war zone looking kind of guy. And he's totally everywhere in between at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and his like rants that he goes on while he's tied to the tree and trying to convince everybody to go is hilarious. Like, I just love Jack Black. I'm so glad.
Way back when I called your mom a cankerous whore?
Yeah, he's such a good member of an ensemble cast. I wonder how much his performance here was calculated into his inclusion into Jumanji. They're like,
yeah,
you got to have this guy because he can pull his own weight even in like just part of an ensemble cast. But
yeah, well, he has like one of the best range in that movie too, because he's usually playing a character. Well, he was technically playing a woman inside a man's body, right? Which was not what any of the other people were doing.
Right.
Well, the only person that like was even close was like The Rock. But like Jack Black definitely has that, like the acting chops to pull something like that off more than anyone else.
Did you cringe when he bit into the bat?
Yes, I did. I didn't know that Jack Black started coronavirus.
Right.
That was crazy.
Also the way that they kind of make fun of the classic in so many war movies, you have the like tinnitus ear after an explosion, and there's like people saying things and things kind of slow motion, and you see Jack Black like, my ass, my ass. Like, that was so funny. Such a good way to make that kind of scene so ridiculous.
So funny.
So yeah, Jeff Portnoy is a great character. We've already talked about Kirk Lazarus, so I want to move on to Al Pacino. And Al Pacino is the only actual African American in this film, and I think they did I think the main thing you're supposed to get out of Al Pacino is this criticism of the hyper masculinity that is associated with rap music.
Sure.
Because he has his rap song that you hear very briefly, like called "I Love the Pussy," which is like so on the nose. And then he has his "Busta Nut Bars" and "Booty Sweat" is the name of his drink. He is. And like I said, it's this hyper masculinity that conflicts with what he really is, which is he's gay. So he has to basically play this character. He's also acting, even though his character is supposed to be more authentic. It's like who he really is, because there's a stereotype that I think a lot of rappers are forced into, where it's like, this is what's marketable, this is what works, you have to say these things to be successful. And it's not just his own journey to be successful. He constantly talks about his community efforts and how he's kind of doing this to help the black community, which not only as a person who follows a lot of black entertainers in the rap community is an important thing. Like 2 Chainz is an absolute legend in Georgia because he is super rich from his career, but he also does a lot of community outreach and helping in Atlanta. And a lot of rappers do that in their own, cities. And I'm glad they brought that up, but he has to pretend to be this other person, almost not because of his self-interest, but because that's what's best for his community, which I think is, I kind of wish they'd put that a little bit more to the forefront, because I think that's an important thing to consider, where it's like, hey, how about maybe the community has to, throw him a bone and play ball with the idea of having a more diverse type of role model come out of their community, not necessarily just be this hyper masculine rapper where you can be because he's still a good guy. He's still doing all those things.
He's like the only other straight person. I mean, sorry. That's not the right I meant to say. He's the only other straight guy in the cast, right? Besides Jay Baruchel, who is like he's like playing it completely straight. Yes. All the other ones are being ridiculous. But Al Pacino, the character, is not. He's totally like a normal guy. And his kind of bit is that he keeps trying to like product place Booty Sweat in like the most inappropriate times, but like he's doing it for like the most wholesome reason you can think of, like
yes. And that's what makes it so much better, because you could just do a criticism of black culture and be like, look at how grotesque this is, like Booty Sweat you're talking about. Like, because I actually ordered some Booty Sweat.
Dude, I had some Booty Sweat in 9th grade. So there's some guys in my class who brought it into our French class. I was a freshman, they were juniors, and they like brought in Booty Sweat and were like posing with it and stuff.
I like me and my friends, I actually, back in my like pre like internet content creation days, I made like a home video of me and the boys reviewing Booty Sweat because we ordered it. We were like, we'll all chip in a few bucks and order one case and we'll all drink it. And that because we were obsessed with this movie, and it was as an energy drink, but it was such a weird experience actually ordering that, because it's so blatant, like it has like butts on the can and stuff. But again, it's funny enough to make that criticism and just say like, look, butts and like rap culture is bad or whatever, or there's improvements that could be made. It's very chauvinistic, which is good. It's a real criticism, but I like that they go the extra step to be like, he's doing that because that's what's marketable and he wants to be as successful as possible for the right reasons, as opposed to some of these other guys who are trying to just be successful because they want to be successful and rich and Hollywood. So I think they did a really good job on Al Pacino, and he's one of the more background characters, I feel like. No, he's definitely more nuanced too.
Awesome.
So that's Al Pacino. I have more on him a little bit later, but we'll keep it moving. We've got Kevin Sandusky, like you were saying, not in a sexuality type of way, but he is the other straight man,
right?
Because he doesn't have this huge personality that all these other actors bring. He's like supposed to be the novice actor, and it's hilarious because he's the only one who follows the real acting directions. Like he actually went to the boot camp that was supposed to prepare them for this, so he can read the map. Like he's like done his research on the area and knows basically more than nothing, which puts him in a new class above the rest of the actors. He's a necessary part of this ensemble cast because it's funny to see the ridiculous people act ridiculous around him, which is our baseline normal.
Yes, exactly. And he's actually read the book and the script,
yes,
which nobody else has.
Which doesn't even make sense to me. How can you possibly even be in a movie without having read the script?
They just cater to him too much, They're just like, what's my line again? Oh, yeah. And they just learn it right there. It's so funny.
But yeah, he plays a necessary role. I think that he's more of a team player in this one.
Yeah.
And but it makes it that much funnier for the other characters. I'll bring up an example, like when they're pretending to take a piss next to him. That joke only works because there's a straight man. You have to have somebody that's normal to bounce.
Actually, trying to take a piss.
Exactly. Yeah. That smelled like bologna for some reason.
Is that how you convinced us it was real? Like
exactly. And then Tug Speedman comes up after with a can of booty sweat and cracks that open to pretend to piss.
It sprays all over his face.
Yes. So that's him. Damien Cockburn is supposed to be the satirization of the novice or new on the scene director.
Right.
Honestly, I didn't feel like he did all that bad. I felt like he was just there to show that some directors can't handle their actors.
Steve Coogan is a great comedy guy. He's a great British comedian.
Oh, he's so good. I fell in love with him after Around the World in 80 Days.
Is he in that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he plays the like inventor who's the main character, and then with Jackie Chan. That's a good movie. That's a good kids movie. Like I watched it not that long ago. It still lives up. If you have to watch like a movie with kids, try to make it Around the World in 80 Days because you'll all enjoy it. But yeah, he's good in this one, and I think it's so brave of them to take him out for the rest of the movie, like to actually kill off his character so early.
That's one of the best written bits of this whole movie. Is where he finally gets up like the courage to like knock some sense into these guys and be like, all right, here, oh my God. He says like the most motivational thing ever. He's got all this like momentum and he's like, all right, guys, we're going to do this. Like, we're going to make the best movie ever. We're going to do all this stuff. You don't know what's real anymore. Like, I'm going to put you right in the middle of it and you're not going to know. Right. And then he immediately blows up and they're like if that had happened even like 1 second before, it would have been pretty clear that was an accident. But because of the it happens directly after he gives his whole speech and decides that he's done giving the speech, you don't know what's real, right? Like they're immediately confused, which is so perfect. Oh my God.
Oh, it was such a good bit. And then having Ben Stiller playing with the head after
blood flavored corn syrup.
That was hilarious, gross out humor.
I was impressed with that prop too, right? Like It had to look like not a prop head. It had to look like a real head, even though obviously it's a prop head.
Right.
And like all the guts are falling out of it and everything.
Yes.
They have no fear of death.
I'm not a fan of gross out humor, but that had me laughing. Like having him stick his finger up in it.
All the stuff at the beginning too, with like where Jay Baruchel's guts are coming out of his stomach and like it's like, what even is this? Oh man, that was so great.
Well, it's so gratuitous. Like that scene where he turns around and he's like, what the fuck? And he's getting like sliced up by the bayonet. Just like, it's not just stabbing him, it's like staying in him and like slicing him. He's just standing there. But
before that, like the one guy gets his head, like he gets a bullet in the back of his head, and then Jack Black is like scooting him around so he gets more blood in his face.
Oh, that was so good. Because I've changed so much since I first saw this. I used to be so squeamish. When I watched this, it was as hard for me to watch as like when I first watched this when I was a teenager. It was as hard to watch as Saving Private Ryan, another one of my first rated R movies, where I was like, this is so real. Oh my gosh. And then now I'm watching it and I'm like, this is so clearly overdone.
I think part of it is because we know what's going to happen. Yeah. But I think also, like I was definitely aware of that. It was like when I first saw it, I'm thinking like, wow, this is really intense. And then watching it now, it's just like, there's no way. Like, it's so crazy.
Well, I love, and again, with Jay Baruchel, like acting, his reaction to that guy shooting blood out of the back of his head was just like, what the fuck? He's just yelling that, like,
oh my God.
Oh man, that was hilarious. So he's great. I wish I don't know, like Jay Baruchel is so notable as far as like he's been in some important movies, but he always kind of plays a little bit less. I don't know. Like it's hard. I have trouble remembering his name. Even though I recognize
it's hard to
his
pronounce
face.
his name. That's part of the problem.
Yes,
he was in How to Train Your Dragon. He's Hiccup in How to Train Your Dragon, and he's in $1 Million Baby, which won an Academy Award too. I think he's like one of the main characters in that.
So Kevin Sandusky. We'll keep it moving here. Or sorry, that we were actually discussing Cockburn there for a second, but Rick Peck, the Hollywood agent, another like classic Hollywood thing that you have to portray if you're going to make a movie about Hollywood. I think again, like his TiVo bit is definitely the running gag throughout this movie, but I also like how he wishes Tug was his son. Like he spends all this time being encouraging and working so hard to make Tug's life better, and not just from like a career perspective as far as like getting him opportunities, making sure his contract is fulfilled, but also making sure he's happy and taken care of from like an emotional standpoint. And then his son is just totally bland and nothing, like he's always so disappointed that his son is
at
just
least you got
normal.
to pick yours.
Yeah, which is so
What a fucked up thing to say.
it's so harsh, yeah. Like, and then the picture is so spot on too. Like the kid doesn't even look happy in that photo. I thought that was hilarious.
Man.
Like I don't know if that's true. I don't know any Hollywood agents, but I wonder if that's like a real thing where it's like, yeah, Hollywood agents like hate their actual family or hate their kid, and they love their client like a kid.
No, Matthew McConaughey is so great. It's so great that they had him for this movie.
Did you know it was almost Owen Wilson?
Yes, I saw that in Wikipedia.
Yeah, apparently. And what it's like, how do you like the connections you must have to be like, oh no, Owen Wilson can't do it. Guess our backup Matthew McConaughey will have to do.
This is like totally a studio movie. I mean, they got all of the the Actors Guild together for this.
Yes. But yeah, I thought he was funny. Just high energy Matthew McConaughey. I love to hear him talk. It was interesting to see I do not remember the internal conflict. From the first time I watched this movie, I totally forgot about him trying to decide if it's worth letting his client die, his son, as a pseudo son, die, if it means becoming incredibly rich.
I know, I love that too. It's just like, what a dilemma, like... He's like, oh man.
And then they
it's
play
like so torn up.
Yes. Well, and then this naturally leads us to Les Grossman, who is the studio executive, and he is so over the top, so high energy, so destructive and loud, and like take no prisoners, always gets what he wants. This, for me, I thought this was totally bizarre when I first saw the movie. I was like, what? Why do they have this guy? I mean, it's like, that's why everything's crazy, because there's this man at the top that controls everything. And that's what makes Tropic Thunder, is they like, what if studio execs totally broke all the rules, had way too much power? What if? Now I feel like it's like, hey, this is what happens. This is actually them just lifting the curtain and saying, hey, look at these monsters that run the studios, and this is how we're going to make fun of them.
Right. I don't know. I think there's it's certainly an exaggeration, right? But his like feelings of like people are expendable and just like assets to be discarded, it certainly has some sort of realism to it. I think that's definitely like an American aspect of this movie. But no, I think Les Grossman like stands apart just because he's played by Tom Cruise, and he's done so perfectly, and he's such a like insane character just in general. It's probably one of the most memorable parts of the movie. It's just him and his and all of his rants and stuff. I think it's actually awesome that he's in this movie as much as he is. Like he could have just been in one or two scenes, but he actually plays like a significant part, moves the plot forward several times. It's certainly an integral part and memorable part of the movie. So that's awesome.
But I mean, what I'm obviously going to lead to here is like, now I feel like this is much more of a criticism towards like a Harvey Weinstein type, where that makes a lot more sense to me now that I know of the horrible things that he's done. It would make sense that people would want to make fun of him, because Harvey Weinstein, also not a very attractive guy. I've actually heard some really horrible things about what he looks like naked, because there have definitely been people who had to see that and they didn't want to. But he's got like the bald cap on. He's wearing a fat suit. Like his fingers are so fat, like sausages.
Yeah, he's wearing fake hands.
Yeah, so, which not only is that just hilarious to see, because Tom Cruise is such a conventionally attractive like lead male. Like he is everything of like that Hollywood portrays to be an attractive guy and like the lead man and what you should strive for from like a looks perspective. And to see him jump to the opposite end of that spectrum is just startling, or it's interesting just because it is. But also to see this studio exec act so monstrous, I see it in such a different light now than I did before, because I feel like there's actual truth to this criticism as opposed to just total hyperbole. Like, especially with like death being totally cool, it's like, okay, if killing your actors is fine, nothing's off the table,
Right.
And
right.
there's a slightly, things are just as bad that Harvey Weinstein did that really happened, So,
right.
So I feel like for me, it makes the character of Les Grossman that much better, because not only is he hilarious, not only is he amazing on screen, but he's also a valid criticism of something that really should be criticized, and maybe a lot of people didn't know about or don't know about. And the way that he dances to Low is hilarious. Okay, let's keep this moving and go to our cool Easter eggs. And
okay.
Yes, and I have a cool Easter egg that Kevin Hart was actually offered the role of Al Pacino, but he said on an interview with The Breakfast Club that he didn't want to portray a gay character, which...
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, and he says he regrets it. He says that he wishes that wasn't something that he... but he said that honestly was his thought process, was that like the fact that the character was going to be revealed as gay. He said it was something he didn't want associated with his brand. And I think in 2008, maybe that's a risk, maybe that's something that Kevin Hart, I don't know.
Yeah, but
Kevin
if
Hart,
anyone's going to break that glass ceiling,
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not saying that he's justified in it or that he's right, but I think at the time, like Kevin Hart is so mega successful, I'm sure he's super calculating about everything. He's up there with The Rock as far as like hardest working man in Hollywood.
Counting punches.
Like always
counting punches.
Yes. Well, yeah, exactly. The counting the punches that they take, where he's like, this doesn't work out in my calculus that being revealed as the gay character from this movie with all these A-listers is going to work out for me. But I just wanted to like bring up that he did regret it, that it was a possibility for him. Can you imagine this movie had Kevin Hart also? Like, while Brandon T. Jackson did great in his role as Al Pacino, he doesn't bring the same name recognition as Kevin Hart does. It would have just been piling on. It honestly makes more sense that it would be Kevin Hart than Brandon T. Jackson. Just because everyone else is already so famous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting.
It is interesting. All right, my first one is the key grip. So, at one point, Les Grossman is on a video call with all the crew, and he's upset with the director because he like wasn't shooting while the explosion was happening,
right?
And this explosion cost like $4 million or something. So he says, "Hey, who's the key grip? Will you go punch the director in the face?" And the reason that they chose the key grip, I didn't know what a key grip was, so I had to look it up. They're in charge of like moving heavy equipment and like especially lights. They're in charge of the lights. So, like some people theorize that the reason he chose the key grip is because he's probably one of the strongest people in the crew and like would probably be able to deliver the best punch. But what's actually interesting is the guy who plays the key grip in this movie was an actual member of the crew for Tropic Thunder. He was not the key grip. He was the transportation captain. But I guess he looked tough enough that they got him to do it. So
it was a good-looking punch too.
It was. You can tell they cut some frames in there, but it definitely didn't hold back. Boom! Awesome. Also, just a kind of an interesting note: there are no pandas outside of China except for in zoos. So when he's going through the jungle there, unless he's actually in China, which I don't think he would be. I think they mentioned that they might be in in Nepal or something, but not in China.
Okay.
So that like I looked up in Wikipedia where pandas are, and they're like in mainland China, like totally landlocked. Like that's the only place in the world they exist. So it's not like there are like multiple species of panda roaming throughout Asia. It's like they're only exist in that one part.
So no animals were harmed in the making of this film. Is that what you're saying?
You saying that panda looked pretty real?
It so real. Almost as real as Kung Fu Panda.
So Justin Theroux, who was one of the writers for this movie, it was Ben Stiller and this guy. He actually is an actor himself and plays Timothy Bryce in American Psycho, which we watched a couple weeks ago. So that was pretty interesting.
That is cool.
A little interesting connection there. Yeah.
Part of the Affable Chat cinematic universe.
That's right. The last one I want to talk about is that Ben Stiller is like a real Tom Cruise fan. So I was trying to find some like interview with him. I couldn't find anything off the top of my head. But I did find this clip, this like sketch bit that Tom Cruise and Ben Stiller did together, where Ben Stiller plays Tom Cruise's stunt double, which is it's really funny. You have to watch it. We'll link to it. Tom Cruise famously does his own stunts. So this guy is not really his stunt double. He's just like a super fan that comes around and like hangs around in the parking lot and like is like pretends to be Tom Cruise's best friend. Like that's like the character that Ben Stiller is playing. But like Ben Stiller has long been like a big Tom Cruise fan and like had this idea for this bit and like was really surprised when Tom Cruise like decided to do it with him. It's really funny. And they do all this hilarious stuff. There's this one part where they're practicing like taking a punch or something. And so Tom is standing there and the guy like who's doing like the martial arts training or something is like leaning up for a punch and he's like halfway to the punch and they say cut and he's like in mid punch and then they say get the other Tom in there and then they bring Ben Stiller in and he just completes the punch and so he just Ben Stiller punched in the face. It's so funny. So
all right, we'll link to that in the description.
It's a great bit. But anyway, like I think this was like I remember reading somewhere and I couldn't find it again, but I remember reading somewhere that this was like a big get for Ben Stiller to have Tom Cruise in this movie. Like he was really surprised that he said yes and like was a great like dream come true for him, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, Tom Cruise is so the opposite of Les Grossman in a lot of ways. But I think it also Tom Cruise is kind of polarizing, and there's definitely a lot of people who are not big fans of his. I think this adds to his likability to be able to poke fun at himself like this.
Right.
So
it is very much calculated, but it is fun to see him be someone so different. And it's just a shame that he is such a crazy person because he otherwise,
right?
Like hands down, would go down in history as one of like the greatest actors of this generation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fact that there's a Tug Speedman in this movie is a testament to what Tom Cruise has done.
Exactly.
So, is that it for Easter eggs?
That's all I got for Easter eggs.
All right. I just wanted to bring up one of the songs in this movie. Touched on it a little bit before, but the song that is always pushed by Al Pacino, or you hear in his commercial for his products, it's called "I Love the Pussy." This was an actual song. I don't know how they released it or where people got it. My brother got it somehow, and it was on my MP3 player when I was a teenager, and it makes so much more sense now. Because when I was a kid, I was like, this is just a rap song. Like, I like this rap song. But, like, I knew it was the rap song from Tropic Thunder. But it's way more than that. So it's on YouTube. You can look it up, the whole song. But it's like basically the whole song is him promoting more of his products and saying generic things about how obsessed he is with the pussy. Like, and it's to the point where it's like, he just loves the genital like organ, not necessarily anything else. Like he like talks about how he loves to shave it and how like he goes way too descriptive about how much he loves like pussies in general, while he's also talking about how
it's like why are you so focused on that? It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
right? Why do you put so much emphasis on that exactly?
He's like, it's like screaming, I am heterosexual. Like, I am a male and
Believe me, please. I am definitely a heterosexual person.
I love having sex with vaginas, except instead he says pussy. Like, it's pretty funny. It's along the lines of MC Vaginas. What is the song?
Guns kill people?
Yes, but he has other ones.
Or I kill people?
Yes, but he has other ones that are. Anyways, it's in that same kind of genre of like over the top heterosexuality, which goes so well with his character. Like the song has no business being as funny as it is, and it also just he has an expanded line of products as well that go in there. Like he has something called noodle legs, and he just talks about how he just indulges in all of his different products at the same time, where he's like, yeah, I'm drinking up that booty sweat while I'm busting a nut. Like he has like
that's so funny.
Which also, I love how the busted nut bar is like a guy like swinging a sledgehammer, like busting an actual like. Anyways, go look that up if you're more interested in Al Pacino's rap career, because there was an actual song, and as a teenager, I unironically enjoyed it. And now it's time for Affable Chat Theater, where the host of Affable Chat will recreate audio portions of the movie without any of the burdens of production value or classical training.
Okay, so my first quote, this is from one of the reporters who is giving exposition about all of our characters and talking about who they are.
On the entertainment channel.
Yeah, it's like an Access Hollywood kind of bit or something, like, it's like on the E network or something. So this is the reporter speaking. Lazarus underwent a controversial pigmentation alteration procedure in order to play the platoon's African-American Sergeant Lincoln Osiris. So, I think this is the portion of the podcast where we talk about blackface.
Yes, and it's an important thing we have to talk about.
I guess so. So, first of all, neither of us are black. I can't necessarily empathize with how it feels seeing someone who like playing a black person on screen. I can sympathize, I can read about it, I can understand why that is problematic. I agree that it's not something that we should be doing. But to erase it from cultural memory and say it's never appropriate to portray it, I think is to ignore something bad, right? It's to forget about it. And I don't think we should forget about it. I think it's something we should remind ourselves about in order to not do it again in the future. And there are plenty of movies, this one included, that do it in a way that I think is appropriate, in that it's making fun of the people that do it. A great example of a movie that has blackface in it and like is definitely like a very woke movie is the movie Dear White People, which is all about this like black radio program that a woman starts at her college. And at the end of the movie, there's a whole like Halloween party where all the white people dress up as black people. And it's like, it's chilling, honestly. This movie, it takes it a much more lighthearted route, but the way that they do it, I think, is really important. And I think there's a number of steps that they take in a preparation for this movie that like will put it in a different light, which I think is very interesting. First of all, they got Rick Baker, who is probably Hollywood's best known like effects or makeup artist. He has worked on so many effects movies. He's like, it's incredible, his filmography. Let me just read some of them. And these are all movies that are known for their makeup. The Exorcist, King Kong, Star Wars, American Werewolf in London, which he won an Academy Award for. Videodrome, which is like a David Cronenberg movie. Harry and the Hendersons, which is that movie about the Bigfoot. Beauty and the Beast, which was a live action one, I think, that came out in 1989. The Missing Link, Ed Wood, Batman Forever, The Nutty Professor, Escape from L.A., Men in Black, Mighty Joe Young, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, The Ring, Hellboy, X-Men: The Last Stand, Maleficent, Tron, Tropic Thunder, Enchanted. Like, any movie that has like really great makeup, this guy worked on.
Wow.
And he's also worked on movies where he's changed people's races. The movie Coming to America, which I just saw for the first time a couple of days ago, has a character played by Eddie Murphy. He's a Jewish guy, all white. He totally recognizable. You can't hardly see Eddie Murphy in there, but it's Eddie Murphy in white face, in Jewish face.
Wow.
And the makeup is done by this guy. So if you're gonna have anyone put blackface on somebody, you're gonna have this guy do it because he's the best ever, basically. Second of all, they actually, before this movie came out, talked to the
NAACP.
Damn it, the NAACP. I can say it. And they interviewed a bunch of black journalists to ask them how they felt about this portrayal. And all of them said that they got the joke and thought it was appropriate. So this was not something that was done in a vacuum. This was not some white guy thinking this is a funny bit. This was something that they workshopped, thought about, did a really thorough job of.
Yeah. No.
Second of all,
go ahead.
in the context of the movie, right? And I don't want to spend this whole time defending blackface. I don't think that's necessarily the
You're not
hill I
defending
want to die on.
blackface. You're not defending blackface.
The context in the context of the movie, they actually have a black guy in the cast, which I think is extremely important, who calls out Robert Downey Jr.'s character Kirk Lazarus over and over again. There's that one part where he says, where Ben Stiller uses the phrase "you people," which is a famous way to dismiss black people, and Kirk Lazarus says, "What do you mean, you people?" And then Al Pacino in the background says, "What do you mean, you people? Who do you think you are?" And there's several parts where he pretends to be black to Al Pacino specifically, and Al Pacino is like, "No, that's not okay. You can't be doing that." Kirk Lazarus even asked for forgiveness, and Al Pacino doesn't forgive him. Even in the context of the movie, the other characters don't think it's appropriate. So I think if you're going to do something like this, I think it's done extremely well. And it just goes to show how far Kirk Lazarus will go for a bit without realizing what he's really doing, right? And I think when he talks about I worked in a textile factory or something for 8 months or whatever it was, he did something to get into the character of this. It's almost the same kind of thing. Or is exploiting somebody else's poor fortune for his own personal gain, right? Look, I know what it's like to be like you because I spent some time in that. It's do you really? Can you really? If you paint yourself up like this, or you go through some controversial pigmentation alterations, does that actually mean you understand what it's like to be in someone's shoes? I don't think so. And the fact that he thinks it might is just indicating of his poor understanding of how things work, I think.
No, I think you've said it exactly right, Joey. And you're not defending blackface. I think what you're doing is defending the idea that you can represent harmful things in culture because you have context. It's you could make a similar argument being I don't want to watch Inglourious Bastards because it has Nazi imagery in it, and I don't want to promote Nazi imagery. It's you're not promoting it. They literally, kill Nazis in the movie.
Yes.
So yeah, and I think this goes along with that as well. People can hear. I understand when people hear Robert Downey Jr. did blackface in Tropic Thunder, and if you've never seen Tropic Thunder and you see that it came out a little while ago, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Robert Downey Jr. didn't get he's not totally getting punished for this. He's gone. There's no repercussions for him, but. Right. Any amount of context for this film will inform you enough that this is not an endorsement. And they do,
it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite. And that's, I think that we should be able to have that. You could make the argument where it's blackface is totally inappropriate no matter the context, which sounds true. It definitely sounds true. But I feel like there still is context. I think that context is everything. And
that's just a heuristic, right? You're skipping to let's do the easy way, right?
Yes.
And again, I think you need to have portrayals of awful things occasionally in order to remind you that they're awful.
Yes, no, and I think it's right. I think you've said it all. And I it's an important part of this movie. but it's not the only thing, you know. And
No,
I
not
think
at all.
people like to overgeneralize it,
And
maybe.
when they make fun of it, it's some of the best bits too.
Yes. Okay. I think we're ready to move on to the next scene.
Okay, so this is when Kirk and Tug are in the woods and they're talking about acting. And they're talking about what it means to be an actor. They're having this conversation.
Yes, and I'll be playing Kirk Lazarus.
And I will be Tug Speedman.
Then again, I always found mere observation in and of itself is a tad rudimentary. Sometimes we gotta dig deeper to mine the true emotional pay dirt. Thus, we can diagram the source of the pain and then live it, you know.
Yeah, live it. Yeah, exactly. You know, there were times when I was doing Jack that I actually felt retarded, like really retarded.
Dang.
In a weird way, I had to sort of free myself up to believe that it was okay to be stupid or dumb. There's more to this quote too, where Kirk is clearly just calling Tug dumb over and over again.
Farting in a bathtub and laughing about it.
Yeah. Okay, I like this quote for a couple of reasons. I think it's first of all, like the way Kirk Lazarus kind of turns this on its head and just has an excuse to call Tug Speedman dumb is hilarious. But also the way that he's thinking about acting in this part, especially where he says, in a weird way, I had to sort of free myself up to believe, you know, like it's that deconstruction of self to rebuild it as something new that I think is a kind of a testament of true acting. It's something that we talked about in American Psycho too, where Roger Ebert said about Christian Bale's performance that he had no instinct for self-preservation. Same kind of thing. If you tear yourself down and you become just a baseline, like I'm a human being, and then build yourself up through this character, right? You become that character in a new way, and are unapologetic about that, and like free to completely be that without any reservations about how that looks toward yourself, right? It's why it's so disappointing that Kevin Hart can't look past the fact that one of the characters in here is gay, right? It's like, even if that was a problem for you, which it really shouldn't be, like, you know that people realize that it's just a person, like you're still a person, right? Like you're just playing a character. Like how much of that conflates, really, you know?
Yeah.
Being able to put yourself into that situation of being like fully trusting the audience to believe that you aren't the person you're saying you are, I think is something that actors have to be able to do in order to actually achieve something good.
Well, yeah, otherwise you would never want to play anybody who's anything but good.
Yes.
You know, and what you view as good, too.
Right.
Like your specific ideology. So,
which I think a lot of, especially A-list actors, kind of struggle with.
Well, I mean, again, we keep returning to this talk, but I think it's so interesting. It's like the script calculus that the Fast and the Furious stars have to do to maintain their same brand image is... yeah, I mean, it's bizarre the way they have to decide those things beforehand, because otherwise they're afraid people take what they see in the movie as more of like a real life impact.
Yes. Although they kind of do play themselves.
They do.
There is a little bit of, I can understand that a little bit. And I can understand that there are lots of people out there that confuse movies with reality, but it hinders the art, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. This next quote is also from Kirk Lazarus. This is when Jay Baruchel, his character, is talking about how they need to execute a plan, the same plan that's in the script. And then we have Kirk Lazarus saying this, and then I will be Kevin Spielman. No, that's not right. Kevin Sandusky. Can't remember his name.
And I'll be Kirk Lazarus.
That's right.
I'll read the script. The script reads me.
What the hell does that even mean? What the hell does that even mean? So throughout this movie, Kirk Lazarus has all of these colloquialisms that he just puts out, you know, all of these things that sound kind of cool, but don't really mean anything, you know? They're just like, they're just like little tiny things that he says. They're like, yeah, I'll get out of this by saying this. I'll just quote the Jeffersons and I'll be totally fine, you know? That's a pass. But this is exactly one of those where he's like, I don't read the script. The script reads me. What does that mean?
It's just one of Kirk Lazarus' many colloquialisms. Like, man, I don't drop character till I do the DVD commentary. Like, he's such a pro, man.
I guess that's what that means. Pro means don't read the script.
He's one with the movie, he's become one with the script.
I am the script.
All right, so I'm not going to preface this one very much. I think you'll recognize it once I get started. But for this next scene, I'm going to be playing Les Grossman. First, take a big step back and literally fuck your own face. I don't know what kind of Pan-Pacific bullshit power play you're trying to pull here, but Asia Jack is my territory. So whatever you're thinking, you'd better think again. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to head down there and I will rain down an ungodly fucking firestorm upon you. You're gonna have to call the fucking United Nations and get a fucking binding resolution to keep me from fucking destroying you. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker. I will massacre you. I will fuck you up.
Well done.
Yes.
Well done.
You can never match what Les Grossman actually delivers in the movie, but it did feel nice to kind of embody him just there. And I'm also going to be a complete asshole to you for the rest of the podcast because I'm doing method acting now as Les Grossman. And that's the only way I can do it.
I can definitely handle that.
I just wanted to return to this quote just because I wanted to appreciate Les Grossman. I think I've already said most of the stuff I want to say about him, but he is an absolute monster of a person, and I mean that in a bad way. And this is just an example of kind of the way that he goes about interacting with literally anyone. And what's really interesting about that is that he is totally fine with that. He has so much power that doing something like this actually isn't that bad for him. Like,
no, not at all. It's actually beneficial.
Yes.
Even though it just seems like a passionate rant that he just came up with on the spot. Apparently, it's also good for business, and that's what he needs to do. Is it right after this one that he says we don't negotiate with terrorists?
This is not that one. This is the first phone call, but then Flaming Dragon calls back.
Flaming Dragon.
So they call back, and that's when he says that they can kill Simple Jack. He doesn't care, that they'll collect on the insurance, which is just so dark. So. And they start playing low, and Bill Hader is there too, and they're both trying to seduce what is his name? Rick
Pecker.
Rick Peck, the Pecker. Rick Peck into joining them, and he guarantees him all these things. And the way he says it, he's not like, I'm just going to give it to you immediately. He's like, way down the line. I'm talking way down the line. Like that's basically what he's doing is he's like, join my sphere of influence,
right,
and I'll make you rich and powerful, because these are the type of things like now that you're in on it, now that you know, it's kind of like now you're part of it. And it's hilarious how much Rick has to decide whether or not he wants to be a part of that. But yeah, I think I don't want to spend too much more time on Les Grossman. Amazing character and amazing delivery from Tom Cruise here.
Absolutely.
So, Joey, I believe you know what time it is.
It is time for us to go a little deeper. So, one of the things that happens in this movie is there's a character named Four Leaf, who is a army vet, a veteran from the Vietnam War, who's had his hands blown off, and yet wrote a well-renowned book that is now being adapted into a movie. And so he's on the set to be consult or whatever.
Even Les Grossman shows him respect when he finds out who he is. He's like, you're a goddamn American hero.
Right. But also shut up.
Yeah.
But you find out about halfway through the movie that not only does Floorleaf actually have his hands, but he actually didn't ever leave the U.S. He was in the military, but he was in the Coast Guard. He never actually deployed to Vietnam. So this is an example of something that's known as stolen valor, which is a actual crime that you can commit in the U.S. Yes. So there's actually a couple of different laws that were passed. One of them was in 2005, which was overturned in 2012 and then recreated in 2013. It's called the Stolen Valor Act of 2013. And basically it really only comes into effect if you're trying to get like veteran benefits or like any other kind of major benefit. If you're getting some sort of discount at a movie theater or like at a burger joint or something, it's kind of hard to prosecute that. But technically that does fall under this act. But it's like a whole thing. And there's actually this whole world out there of people that are trying to track down people that have stolen valor, and like call him out for it. And there's this guy named Don Shipley, who is a old U.S. Navy vet, who spent a brief time working for Blackwater, a mercenary group in Afghanistan. Just a thing to point out. He is kind of a controversial figure. His YouTube channel got shut down because he was literally doxing people who he deemed as stealing valor. So what's worse in a way, right? Obviously, he's kind of going off in his own kind of vigilante justice, calling out these people, doing his own research. How much he can make mistakes, right? He's just a person. I believe his intentions are probably good, but it doesn't mean that he's not going to call someone out, not on purpose. So I feel like it was probably a good thing that they took that down, or at least mitigated how much he could dox people,
right?
Because he's still definitely making videos and still definitely doxing people. The question, I think, is what he's doing a good thing? It's kind of an interesting dichotomy here.
No, who's the he in this case?
Don Shipley, or people that call out stolen valor people, because there's a bunch of there's a type 1 and type 2 error here, right? Like if you lay out your grid, right? In one situation, you call somebody out who is not a veteran, right? Or is a veteran but is claiming to do something that they didn't, which is the other type of stolen valor, which is what Four Leaf does, right? He was really in the military. He deserves some credit for that, but he didn't do what he claimed he did, right? That's like equally as bad in the eyes of these guys.
Right. Oh, definitely.
So you call someone out, and then who actually deserves it. Then there's you don't call somebody out who does deserve it, right? What's the problem with that? Well, it's possible they could go as far as getting some sort of benefit from the government, but really what this is going to look like is they feel better about themselves. They sometimes get free drinks at the bar, right? They can tell some stories that aren't theirs, and a lot of these people that do this are people theorize are mentally ill and actually believe that they were in the military and that this is some sort of other thing that it's a symptom of a different problem.
Right.
Some of the people are just feel terrible about themselves and are very insecure, and so they buy a military uniform and then go out and reap the benefits from that of being a military person in public. But then there's the not calling someone out who doesn't deserve it, right? So which is everyone else, you and I, normally walking down the street, not getting called out for being in the military. That's what normally happens. But then there's the calling someone out who is in the military and is not lying, right?
Right.
And in a lot of these situations, it's hard to tell whether this person is really who they say they are, right? Because imagine if you were a vet, right? Imagine if you were decorated, you did something that deserves some sort of honor, and then some guy who thinks he knows better harasses you on the street and says, "Hey, you're a liar. Hey, you don't deserve all that stuff that they said you did, right? What, how dare you claim all that? How dare you do this?" Would you give that guy the time of day? Would you just wouldn't the grown-up thing be just to ignore him? And in a way, it's like this Kafka trap, right? Where no matter what you do, whether you're stuck, you can't get out of it, because if someone says you did it, it's their word against yours, right? And
right.
If Don Shipley, who is this decorated, U.S. Navy guy, right, who's had his YouTube channel and is known for doing this, if he says, "Hey, you're not a veteran," even though you might be, it sucks to be you, basically. And it's, I don't know, it's kind of it's definitely a hairy situation. I think some of these people probably deserve to have them taken down a notch if they really are lying. But I don't know if the type 2 error really justifies it, because the people that actually deserve the credit should in no way be questioned about that. I think that's something that they deserve to just live their lives and claim to do, it doesn't matter that much.
Well,
so
I'll add a wrinkle to this whole situation because
Sure.
there are some guys who you can't really call out because they don't actually claim any veteran status, but they still seek to get a little bit of recognition for being pro-military. This is something that I've seen called out on Instagram for these like pro-military accounts where they call it implied valor, where there are these Instagram accounts where people will always take pictures with their guns and they'll be wearing military like uniform type stuff, like tactical vests and all this other stuff. And everything is a very American flag and like saluting. And it's like sometimes you have to be like brave on the front lines, basically kind of cosplaying as like generic military.
Fetishizing the military.
But those guys have never been in the military, you know? So, but they gain this massive following from people who genuinely do support the military, and that's something that appeals to them online. So you have these clean-cut, sexy-looking guys with guns who all they do is take photos, but they get the same recognition that like people who want to support the military that are giving out, right? They're out there giving that kind of, you know, I just love how it definitely has spawned off of stolen valor, because now there's this middle ground where you can just imply that you've done these things, not necessarily say anything that anyone can hold against you and still reap the benefits from like a social perspective.
I hate that. I really hate that.
So, yeah, I just thought it was weird. It just reminded me of that. It's just a weird phenomenon around like the idea of valor.
Yeah. No, it's super weird, and like, I don't know. I think like these people definitely deserve the credit they get. And honestly, like if your idea of like I'm gonna be cool now by pretending to be in the military, like it doesn't matter that much to me, obviously, but I guess someone who's been in the military would probably see that as very offensive. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I think a lot of people would probably just be like, you know what, just let them do it, you know, whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, my mom and my dad are both retired military, and I've never seen them. They've never been the type of people to like flaunt it or be all about. I mean, they have 45 years combined service.
I think that's like how most people are,
right?
You know, they're just like, this is a thing about me. It doesn't define me.
Well, and also at a certain point, I feel like seeing how the sausages get made is almost like, I don't really think I want to be totally defined by this.
Right.
You know, I'm a person also.
Right. I think there's probably reasonable people who have served in the military who are a little more disillusioned than the people that are doing the implied valor thing of thinking it's like, oh, it's the coolest thing ever. Right. The people that think that are probably the ones that never really saw much action, probably.
No, definitely. So.
Okay.
All right.
You ready to move on to our ratings?
Yes. So that wraps up the discussion. As we do on every episode, we're going to deliver our ratings for the movie. Joey, what rating do you give Tropic Thunder?
I give this movie a movie deal.
Nice. Nice. It earned it. It definitely earned it. Well written. I give this movie 2 prosthetic hooks way up.
That's funny.
Nice. So there you have it. All right, Joey, what's next on Tropic Thunder? Tropic Thunder, yes. We've renamed the podcast Tropic Thunder.
It is now Tropic Thunder, the podcast.
And what are we doing next week?
Next week, we are doing Mary Poppins. The original.
Right. The original, not the Lin-Manuel, not the one where Lin-Manuel Miranda plays Mary Poppins. We're doing the original. What year is the original from? It's old, right?
It's old.
Hold on.
From the old times.
How accessible is the original? Is it on Disney Plus?
Great question. I have it DVD, so.
Okay. Well, we'll have to figure that. I don't want to have to.
1964.
1964. Okay. Well, yeah, we'll have to track that one down. But that's what we're doing next on Affable Chat. A limited time exclusive deal here on the podcast. If you want to hear your voice played on the podcast, all you have to do is dial our number, 833-600-2428.
Yes, that's 833-600-CHAT. This is going away. All right? It's going to be gone like a miracle.
It's like a miracle. They say as the weather gets warmer, it's just going to go disappear.
It's just going to disappear.
It's just going to be gone. And everyone will think it's such a funny memory because no one has called in a while. So if you want to hear your voice on this podcast, the easiest way to be featured on a podcast is just to dial our phone number, which is 833-600.
This is your last chance. This really is. Next time we record, we're shutting this thing down. So you got as much time as that takes.
That's right.
Who knows?
That's right. So one more time, that's 833-600-2428.
833-600-CHAT. Phones are open anytime.
Leave us a message.
They're just waiting for you to call.
Subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And wherever you listen to us, make sure you leave us a review. We're also on YouTube, too. We just put podcasts on YouTube as well.
Yes, so you can subscribe to us there and leave us a comment or smash that like button. You can reach us
one of those likes.
That's right. You can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Affable Chat. Also on TikTok, same handle at Affable Chat. Or you can send us an email, affablechat@gmail.com.
Yes, and we also, in addition to uploading the podcast to the YouTube channel, we also have YouTube videos that are not about movies worth checking out as well. Just search Affable Chat on YouTube.
That's right. We're the only ones. We're the only Affable Chat on the internet.
That's right.
So that's going to do it for this episode on Tropic Thunder. For Affable Chat, I'm Benjamin.
And I'm Joey.
Thanks for listening.